community voice is celebrated, elevated, and uplifted. All right. And I believe that we are live. What is going on, y'all? Welcome to another. Actually, let's correct welcome to the last live show of the season. Woo! I'm excited, y'all, because we have done a whole season of the Hood Talks podcast. And we are here with this great conversation with Ferguson residents, my fellow residents of Ferguson. Y'all know I am living and very much alive here in Ferguson. And I am a big advocate of everything that goes on in Ferguson and the people here in Ferguson. So I'm excited to be here and have this guest with me, some great people of Ferguson who's doing some work also in Ferguson. But we'll get into all of that later. I'm happy that you are here with me, and I cannot stress how important this show is because this is a milestone for us, y'all. Y'all have been rocking with the Hood Talks podcast since December of last year. We've done over 20 shows. We've had 70 guests on the show, and we've been having great conversations, y'all. And we're going to keep it going in December coming up, but right now we will be taking a break with live shows. We will still be bringing you content. We'll still be talking about the Hood Needs segment and all those great organizations that are providing services. And you know, your girl will be out in the community doing the community shout outs and all that good stuff. So I got some stuff for you, but we will be taking a break from this here right here. And I again appreciate everybody that has been here tuning in, sharing, and all of that good stuff with us here at the Hood Talks podcast. And y'all know how we do. We do t-shirts giveaways, right? You watch a live show, you must share this live. Make sure that you're following us and also comment Ferguson in the comments, okay? That's what you got to do. To get you a custom t-shirt, you must, again, make sure you're sharing this live. Comment Ferguson in the comment section and make sure you're following us all on our social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, you know, all that good stuff. But I'll remind you in the comments about that. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to allow the space for these great folks to introduce themselves. Hello, everybody on my screen. How are you all today? I am.
Hey, Savannah.
Hey. Yes, y'all. I am so ready for this conversation and excited to talk about Ferguson. I'm going to go ahead and let Miss Carol, could you please introduce yourself and tell the people who you are?
Okay, thank you, Savannah. And yes, I'm Carolyn Randazzo. I've lived in Ferguson most of my life and raised my children here. I'm a retired teacher. I belong to several organizations that have some kind of an impact on Ferguson. Grade A for Change, who works on school board elections and getting diversity on our school board. Metropolitan Congregations United for St. Louis, working on systemic racism and improving our community. And I also convene the Readings on Race book club sponsored by the Ferguson Public Library. I'm glad to be here today.
And we are super excited to have you. Another gem in the Ferguson community out here doing some work. And yes, I've met her and she was out here like doing some work. Like, hey, I'm like, look at it. Okay. So yeah, I'm so grateful that you're here to join us on this conversation. And as someone who's been in Ferguson for a long time, you deserve to be here and have this conversation with us. So thank you for joining us. Miss Jackie, can you please tell the people who you are?
Sure. Hi, I'm a retired professor from UMSL, but really I still work with UMSL right now, making sure that Ferguson is included in some fairly sizable upcoming grants. I also on the Neighborhood Policing Steering Committee, Ferguson Collaborative, and I work with Proud and try to get people who know more about the region and hot topics to come through Proud and share that information with Ferguson. Like we're going to look at the rezoning, hopefully, that's due to the census. That's all for today. Thank you.
All right, all righty. Well, thank you for being here also. I appreciate it. Miss Emily, come through. Please tell the people who you are.
Well, I grew up in Ferguson on the west side and then moved to the north side and I'm now on the east side. So I'm a longtime Ferguson member, community member, and I'm a graduate of McClure, class of 1997. And I am currently a high school art teacher in St. Louis County, but I'm actually not in Ferguson for work. I have a nice long commute. My son is 16 and he has been a member of the Ferguson swim team for a long time. And he's also a member of Ferguson's Boy Scout troop and working on Eagle now. So we're involved in a few different things around the community. We do a lot with our church, St. Stephen's, and a lot of community gardening. And that's about it for me.
All right, all right. Thank you for being here, neighbor. Yes, 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 y'all. So let's see, who else do we got? Oh, Mr. Orlando. Woo, 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 in
Yes.
woo, 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 in Come through and tell the people who you
Okay,
are.
okay. So I am Orlando Sharp. I am a 10-year Ferguson resident. My wife and my son, Sincerely Sharp. We have been living here since maybe 2008, 2009. I am working and developing under the leadership of NLF, and it's been amazing. So the cohort has really created an opportunity for me to get in the game in my community. So I've lived here, not really worked here and really played here. And so this is an opportunity for me to really become a community catalyst, a culture collaborator. And if anybody knows me, I am a former educator and STEM professional development specialist. And so STEM is me all the time. So I am becoming a creative technologist, and I am excited to be a part of this platform because I think that we as Ferguson have an opportunity to connect on a higher level than what we're doing currently. And so I'm a newbie to this, and so it's exciting to hear what other people are doing and really get involved, get familiar and get active.
Yes, 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 yes. My fellow Ferguson resident. I'm so happy to be able to have know you and meet you and work with you. So
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready.
I got you. All right, another NLF here on the screen today, and the best cohort there was. Yeah, 2020. No shade, no shade to y'all.
Hey,
2021.
I know you guys are doing it. We're watching y'all work right now.
Yes, yes, yes. Mr. Allen, come through and tell the people who you are.
Excellent, thank you. Alan Miller. Yes, these neighborhood leadership fellow people are everywhere, aren't they? So, yeah, I'm also glad Mr. Orlando went before me because I was feeling as a 25-year resident that I'm a newbie here. So glad to hear someone else is a little bit younger, shorter time. So my main things is I'm working with the Neighborhood Policing Steering Committee also. And currently I'm the chair of PROUD, which is People Reaching Out for Unity and Diversity, which Ms. Jackie talked about a little bit. And their purpose is to try to develop dialogues and opportunities for members across Ferguson to get together, meet and dialogue and work on developing community together. So glad to be here.
All right. We glad to have you here also. Again, shout out to all the work that you do, you and your lovely wife here in Ferguson, in the PROUD organization. Mr. Duane James himself. How are you, sir?
I am wonderful. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be a part of this amazing panel. Amazing individuals doing great work. My name is Duane T James. I've been a Ferguson resident since 1997. As a resident, I've been a part of neighborhood associations. I was a former council member. One of the original founders of the Ferguson Youth Initiative, also helped organize the Ferguson Twilight Run. Worked with other organizations as they did at neighborhood associations, community gardens, et cetera. And then now I'm currently a board member of the One West Florissant Initiative as well. So I'm just happy to be here and see how I can lend my voice.
And again, we appreciate you being here, all of you. I am so excited for all of you and glad that you're all here to have this conversation. Man, I'm just, yeah. This, when we talk about Ferguson and the diverse of Ferguson in a sense, and all of the things that happen in Ferguson and the good people of Ferguson, here they are on my screen. So we're gonna go ahead because time is limited, and we're gonna get into this conversation because it's gonna be juicy. It's gonna be juicy anytime we talk about Ferguson. It's a lot going on over here in these streets. So myself, I have been a resident of Ferguson for about 9 years. I stayed in one area for a while, Ferguson, and then I recently moved and migrated to the old East Ferguson neighborhood where I am. Woohoo! I know, right? Where I recently purchased a house 3 years ago. So I've been in Ferguson for a while. New to the aspect of community in Ferguson and the community work and all of that. But I guess my question to you all to start this conversation is a little bit around why Ferguson? Because I know people especially after all the stuff that goes on and all the things, in Ferguson, why Ferguson? Why do we remain living in Ferguson? Anybody? Let's start the conversation. Let's go. Let's flow.
Yeah, I like to weigh in. I came to moved to Ferguson over 25 years ago. This is Jackie. And the reason I actually found Ferguson, because I was actually living in an unincorporated out by Blackjack, is that I worked at the museum and I took a friend home when her car broke down, and she lives in Ferguson. And that was the first time I actually bothered to go inside of Ferguson. She lived off Elizabeth. And I thought, wow, this is an interesting place. You still have stores, local stores. You have really wonderful architecture and lots of wonderful trees. And I saw people walking up and down the streets and seeming to enjoy themselves. And I thought, rather than renting, I'm going to look for a house to buy. And that's how I ended up over here in Ferguson. I'm right around the corner from you on Barrett and Old Ferguson East.
Yeah, it's one thing for you to say those trees, because I was just complaining about them trees. And in the fall, when all those leaves be falling. But yeah, Ferguson is definitely known for all of the beautiful trees that they have here in the city. Anybody else? Why Ferguson? Why you remain in Ferguson?
Orlando, you want to go or you want me to go?
I was sneezing, but
okay.
My question would only be why not? Ferguson is just as good as any place. I grew up in a strong community of U City, and I'm still really connected in that community. But I see a lot of similarities in Ferguson that caused me to move my family here. I have great neighbors. In general, it's a great environment and great atmosphere in my neighborhood. And I think that if we put forth a better effort as a community, we can make this amazing. So leaving is not going to solve anybody's problems.
Come through.
Yeah, I agree with Orlando. I mean, I moved here because of the housing stock, because I could afford to live here. I love the sense of walkability, love the sense of the restaurants, the community aspects. Yes, 2014 brought up a lot of disparities and inequities that were a part of our community, but basically brought them to light from a regional and national sense and international sense. And now we just have the potential and the opportunity to basically work through them. These same inequities and issues and problems and situations are going to be present in other communities. Now we just know that we have those opportunities to basically address them. So me leaving here is not going to solve the inequities. Me staying here is basically helping me provide an opportunity to be a part of those solutions. So I still love it. I mean, I love the geography. You're close to all the different highways. I love the passions of the community members and passions from all extremes. I love that passion, that fight, that energy. And I still think that we have the opportunities from our economic status to be diverse in all senses of the world. So everyone can actually live here depending on their economic status, their background, et cetera, et cetera. If we actually utilize all those resources, I think we have the potential to be better than we are now or were before. So.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things for me to buy a house in Ferguson. It was like, I shouldn't leave Ferguson. I deserve to be here just like anybody else. And, in the sense of, like you said, leaving is not going to always solve any problems. So I think that's a great point. Because sometimes we get great people to do great things and they get discouraged and they leave and then think nothing happens at all, right? So anybody else? Why Ferguson? I know, Carol, you've been here for a while. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Why Ferguson? And I like, Orlando, how you said, why not? And I like that. I think that's another way to look at it too. But like I said, I've lived here most of my life. I did live away for a short time, and Ferguson is home to me. I was 3 months old when my family moved here because my dad worked for the Wabash Railroad in those days. And it's just home. Even when I've lived other places for a short time, it's like, yeah, I got to get back to Ferguson, So that's the way I look at it. And as several of you have said, we're not going to solve any problems by leaving. I think I still believe that we are kind of the best kept secret around. Maybe we're not so secret anymore.
No. Definitely not a secret anymore.
But at any rate, I agree. We have so much potential here. We have so many possibilities from great people who live here. Our location, I mean, we couldn't be more convenient to most anywhere in the St. Louis area. And our housing that is so affordable. I know we always think a lot in Ferguson about, our Victorian houses, which are beautiful. I love them. But, I wonder if maybe we don't have just as many mid-century modern houses that are also becoming really the, important kind of era of house also in this area. But I think we have the ability, yes, when Michael Brown was killed, that put the spotlight on us. And I think put the spotlight on those of us who've lived here a long time too, of wait a minute, there are issues here. I taught in our school district, so I kind of knew it already anyway. But I think we're in an opportunity. I think we have to find what makes us unique being Ferguson, and let's go with it. That's what we are. We are not. We can be compared to other communities, I feel like, in the St. Louis area, but we're not those communities. So let's find what's unique about us and go with that. And that's what we have to use, I think, to move our city forward.
Yes. I hear you guys talking a lot about moving forward. Did anybody else want to talk about Wiley Ferguson, or before I go on? Okay.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead, Alan.
Okay. So yes. So there are two. You gave two parts of the question, and they are very, very different. So most of the things we've talked about until the end here, yes, why did we move to Ferguson? And all those amenities are here. But I really want to emphasize about why do we stay? I look at, when we have a big family reunion with my wife's family and everything, and, just our family connections, everything. No one else lives in a place quite like Ferguson. And the main issue is this. The reason 24 happened here is there's something unique here. And what has happened since 2014 is that same thing. And that is, we are a really small town that is a really big town, but at the same time. And that's why things like the Neighborhood Leadership Fellows can have such a big effect, is because we are small enough that all of us can, rather than, as we're saying, leave rather than trying to solve the problems, we have the ability to make a real effort here. The NLF has shown how many people can come from, not being involved at all. And all of a sudden they're very active, very visible within the community. And even not in the NLF, but just in general. I have met hundreds of people because of what has happened in our community in the past few years that I never would have had the opportunity to meet. And many of them have become such deep, strong friends. And that kind of an interchange is not possible elsewhere. Either the city's too big, the city's too small, you're too close, whatever. We have this kind of just fluidity that really makes our city unique.
Yes, I would definitely say Ferguson is definitely unique in a lot of ways. Yeah, it has been, for me, very interesting living here in Ferguson, especially now getting into more of the community side and community work. At first, I was just living. I was just living here. Wasn't too much aware of where I was living. But now that I've gotten more exposure to the community of Ferguson and just being more into community work, which I know some of you all are tapped into, I've just unveiled a lot of things about Ferguson that I just never knew. And which is weird because I have an aunt that's been in Ferguson. Oh, wow. I can't even imagine. I think over 20 years. But so I even have history in Ferguson, family that has history in Ferguson. And, like I said, what made me want to stay is like we talk about gentrification and, people who've been here, leaving when certain things happen. I was really like, I ain't leaving Ferguson. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stand strong. And that's what made me purchase a home in Ferguson 3 years ago. But I do kind of want to get into your experiences. Like for me living in Ferguson, recently, I feel like it's been very interesting. And it's very hard to kind of see some of the things that's been unfolding. And like, I just, again, when the Mike Brown situation happened, of course your eyes were open, but it just I feel like it's just unveiled a whole lot more recently with the new just the new administration coming in, and just things have really felt to me personally a little ugly here in Ferguson. How have your experiences been before the Mike Brown situation to now? How have your experience been? And another question to that is, do you think there's been change? What changes have really been made in that sense? Oh, y'all gonna go quiet?
I mean, I won't go quiet. I'll speak up, and then everyone else can piggyback or tell me I'm wrong. So when I first moved in, I felt like, even though I grew up in Normandy, it was mostly, there was a strong Ferguson connection. So if you didn't go to McClure, if you didn't grow up here, it was more of having to almost be introduced into how Ferguson operated and the system of Ferguson. That's just the way I felt. Not saying it was true or not, but it was like that introduction. It's like someone coming in from outside of St. Louis. And so it was like, oh, what high school did you go to? Oh, you didn't go to high school here? What does that look like? It was that on a Ferguson level. That's the way I felt. But once you start doing volunteer work, showing up, being part of the community, people saw you, accepted, worked, and that's how I got connected. That's how I start doing the work. And I think for me, 2014 resonated the inequities from race and economics, but it also showcased that there was a divide of how we actually classify people. Either you own your home, you rent your home, you live on that side of town, you live on this side of town. How do we make things available to all, no matter how you were actually included as a Ferguson resident? So that's what I felt and I heard. Now I just see that there's still a divide of how invested have you been in Ferguson? So how many years have you been here? What are you a part of? What are you doing? All of this to basically validate your existence, were you involved prior to Mike Brown, or were you involved before Mike Brown? Are you involved in the right things? So all of that still is a validation instead of just accepting people that they're involved. And I think that that's where we are now. Is like, we all want community,
Right.
and we are all defining community different ways instead of just saying that we all want community. We all want my home to prosper. I want to thrive, whatever that thrive actually looks like. I think we have to get back to that to get more accepting. But I think that the gray area is expanding, where people are more accepting, understanding, and listening. It's still taking time, because we're talking about generations and generations, and some of us have been in the fight for generations, and some of us are just new to the fight. So how do we be accepting to all and understand that we're still all just trying to fight? So I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of, see, Dr. Jackie, she's going to teach me some stuff right now. I just know it. I already know it.
Come on, Miss Jackie. How do you feel?
Yeah, I was going to say something. What I noticed is like pre-Michael Brown versus post-Michael Brown's death is a lot of people feel like they're still victims. There's a lot of victimhood going on. Oh, we weren't that bad. Oh, we didn't do this. Oh, we could have done that. And we need to really move on. And I try to work with groups of people who want to move on, especially in terms of bringing in resources from UMSO, from other organizations. Like we had the first community discussion on racism. And that was really interesting to see who showed up and who was actually participating. And that's also the reason why I work with the police, which normally are not people I hang out with. But the thing is that the police here are trying to make a difference, and they do take some of the suggestions that we bring up and to them to heart. Like, for example, we had a breakout session a few weeks back, and I said, instead of complaining, I was talking to the police officers, I said, instead of complaining that people don't appreciate you, why don't you let people know what you're doing? So, and if you need the community's help, then you need to get online and let them know that you need help. And since that time, we sometimes got too much information or too many emails, but they have been actually communicating, getting on the different social medias and letting people know what's going on. And that makes a huge difference, because we've had a big communication gap here. Whereas you find things out through rumor, you find things out on social media, you hear something left over at the council meeting if you happen to be there or listen to it, and that needs to stop.
I'm gonna jump in and say I agree with everything that's been going on with what Duane said and what Dr. Lewis Harris said. I also believe that there's it's following the design. It is what happens after something tragic or something big happens. We're trying to correct ourselves back into what it was. And just to be clear, I was hanging out in Ferguson during my college years. I mean, back in the 90s, before, and so I know what it is and how it feels to live in that neighborhood and participate and hang out there. It is not connected to the greater Ferguson. And that's just in a light sense. But as a community, in general, we are not connected. We are very comfortable with keeping things the way that they have always been. And that's sometimes that's the fight that we're drawing our line on. So no, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. I'm really interested in challenging us to think a little bit more creatively. I sat in on a call with some community officials and the mayor and city manager, and they were talking about how they were reaching out to the community to inform them of issues and things that were happening in the neighborhood and decisions that had to be made. And they were basically saying, well, no one's responding. And I said, yeah, but you're communicating the same way you've been communicating forever. There's a whole generation of people who don't communicate that way. And then there's the greater community who does not even have access to that. So if you put out something in the Ferguson newspaper, yeah, only a small percentage of the community is actually going to read that.
Yes.
And it's important to navigate in all of the areas and spaces. But if you don't consider those spaces valuable in the first place, you don't really have any concern. It's easy for you to step back and just say, well, I checked that box. And that's part of the problem, because you want to be able to frame everything in a nice, neat package and say, well, they didn't do this, they didn't. If we really want the community to be what we want it to be, we need everybody to be involved. We need all voices heard and everyone to be seen. But that also makes people uncomfortable. And so it's easier for us to go back into what we've been doing. And that's going to lead us to the place where we've just come from.
That's a great point. I think I talk a lot about that too, is that we have to shake up the things that we've done or been doing and do something different. And we must stop the division, like the divide. I think that's one of the things that's really, like you said, it has to be this way or that way. And it's like, where can we find common ground? And some things that I think kind of go back to what you said, Duane, like we know we want safer streets. So how can we rally together to make this happen instead of it being your way or their way or no way? Like, how can we say, okay, we want safer streets. What can we agree on to make sure that we get that done? How can we work with whoever is in this office at this moment to make sure that we at least have safer streets? But whew, it's a hard one, y'all live here.
You also can't want these things for yourself without wanting them for everyone else, or that's just not going to work. If you want better schools for your child, but you got to want that for everybody else too. Yes. Then it's almost just a greater chance of success when you got to think bigger than yourself. My house is just fine. I have great internet connection here. I could sit and stand on that, but that's not representative of everyone in Ferguson. If we had a great infrastructure as far as education and internet connectivity, what kind of impressive things could we do in our community? Everyone benefits, but oftentimes we draw that line where I'm just gonna cut my grass. Well, I promise you, when I go outside, I do cut into my neighbor's yard, and him likewise on both sides. And it helps out because, if I just keep cutting mine, and I don't like cutting grass, but you know what I'm saying?
It's beyond just you. And again, thinking about where you live, the people you live amongst as community. And if I'm taken care of and you're taken care of, our community is taken care of. So again, like you said, it can't be a self thing. Like it has to be. And for me on that aspect though too, Orlando, is not doing it for clout. Excuse my language, y'all know this is the Hood Talk podcast. And when I say that, like if you're gonna do something nice and you're doing something in the community because it's great to do, let's not just do it so you can go shout it out and get all of the praise about doing it. Like that is not, to me, a great thing to be doing. Like let's literally be doing it because you want it to be done, because you love where you are and you love your community, not for the shout of the praise of, oh, thank God for you. Where would we be if we didn't have you here in Ferguson? So yeah, that's my thing too. I think people do the things that they do not for the right reasons, and then it gets sidetracked for the people that's doing the real work. Because they're like, well, I didn't know about it, or I didn't see that, or it doesn't always have to be for show. So that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry, y'all.
But it's a good 2 cents, because the reality is if we built community and it was connected and we had the culture of affirmation and celebration, then nobody has to go search for clout. I don't have to try to make myself feel special, because when I do something, the people who know, and I'm affirmed, and I'm encouraged to do it more. But oftentimes we only celebrate around the wrong things. We only celebrate our friends, people that we cool with, But there are incredible things that happen in Ferguson. There are incredible people in Ferguson, but that all is left. That all goes with the out with the wash, because the foolishness is what is on Front Street versus a balance. You know what I'm saying? And so you can't develop a connected community like that. Like, how many people actually know about Duane James? How many people?
Can we put Orlando on mute right now? It's a whole lot of amazing people on this call. I mean, I've been working with Orlando. I've been working with Dr. Jackie forever.
Duane, I didn't say that to put you out, but I said that to say, if we honor the people who have impacted us and we share that, then now we're, you know what I'm saying? Now we're encouraging everybody, because, it is what it is. If you're talking about, if you're encouraging and affirming the people in your neighborhood or in your community, the people that you see, if we make that a cultural thing, then guess what? Now everybody has an opportunity to be represented.
Yes, come on, Alan. I know you got some 2 cents in there. Come on. Emily, don't go quiet on me, y'all. Y'all got
I'm gonna go on mute.
I'll definitely say something, because I feel like mentioning Duane, like this, that was already like the track I was thinking about. And I'll like kind of get to that, because a lot of people I know in Ferguson don't really, you probably might not know them. They do things like take care of the book order for the second grade classroom vote, or they cut out the decals for the swim team, or hold a timer at the swim meet, and a lot of people I know, they go about doing little things like cutting into their neighbor's lawn, like you said, or, returning their neighbor's dog to their house occasionally, stuff like that. I think there's a lot of people in Ferguson anyway who have no desire to be seen. And now I'm thinking, like, in these recent years, kind of are hesitant, like, oh, so we got to do something bigger than this. And so, like, brings me to think of Duane, like, who was he? He was this friendly face that was always there when I went to stuff. Now, did I know like further about him? I don't know. It's just this nice guy that was always walking around. He was like, he would be at the market or he'd be at the race. Did I know he helped organize the race? No, I didn't know that. I was just there running because I like to run, So I feel like I'm a little more on the other side of people that are just kind of like living your life and doing things. But recently we become aware that we're going to have to do a little bit more than, take care of the book order in the classroom. Apparently in the community, things weren't as friendly as we thought they were in our little bubble. And that was like upsetting, because I'm like, well, I know this person, I know my neighbor across the street, my neighbor to the left, my parents over here, this guy, Duane, that's always at the market. These people all seem very nice and they all seem to get along and care and, about all different kinds of people. And I think it was really unsettling for a lot of people to find out, like, so what are we supposed to do to fix that when we're already like really trying to do a great job and just live this nice life? Like, oh, there's hard work and a lot of time is going to have to be put in, because there's a lot of really serious things and you care about it. So you're going to have to like take this leap and put in this effort. And sometimes it's negative to think about it, like reading books that are about race and like, hearing people's, hurtful stories, like, and it weighs on you, but that's your community's weight, so you have to find a way to shoulder that and forward.
Come on, Carol.
That's valid.
Did Carol come in? I think she was trying to come from.
Yes, I finally got back in. We're having internet problems at our house.
Welcome to Ferguson.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to say something, or you just coming back in?
Mostly just coming back in, and I'm sorry I've missed out on some of the conversation, but a few minutes ago, someone talked about communication and how we get that out to people, how we get what's happening in the city out to the people. And, I think I agree. We have to use everything possible, whether it's the newspaper, it's anything on the internet, any way, any social media, any way we can. But I think one other piece that we need to do, and this comes from my experience, is that we have to actually go out and talk to people. You know, we expect people to come to a meeting, to an open house, to a town hall. And I think all of those are important. And I go to those kinds of things. But I also, my experience with the groups I work with, working on the school board campaign, working with MCU, we go out and canvass and knock on people's doors and talk to them. Now, during the pandemic, that's been a little bit, you know, touchy and everything, but it works. A few years back, when I first started doing this work after I retired, and me go out and knock on a stranger's door and talk to them about, you know, an issue that's really important to me and really important to the community. Oh no, not me. I'm not going to do that. But I did it, and it works. It works. It's just getting out and doing it. It's a lot of hard work to walk those streets and knock on those doors. But it's amazing. Every time I've gone out and canvassed, I've had someone say to me, wow, nobody ever comes by and talks to me about this. You know, whether it's the school board election, whatever it is. And that makes it all worthwhile right there. You know, you knock on a lot of doors, a lot of them don't open up to you. Some of them, people just don't have the time or whatever. But for those people that you do talk to, it means an awful lot.
I think that's a valid point. And I think that's not even just for Ferguson, which is needed here, but I think that's for the region, period, is that we're not getting out, which I know COVID is running rampant and all that. I ain't telling people go out here now and just go be in front of everybody, but I'm just saying, like, we really do need to step outside of our own homes and our own spaces and start really getting to know amongst people we live amongst and each other. Shout out to, again, Emily. Y'all know, for those who follow me on Facebook, I was recently talking about gardening and things like that. Emily has come over to my house and we've talked, and you know, she's helped me with my garden, and she's giving me tips on how to get the garden started. So we've learned that we have an interest in gardening together, but we also start that by having also other conversations that you know, go into things that's happening in our community or how I'm involved. So that's how we've gotten to know each other. So it's really, and this is from myself too. I'm speaking to myself as I speak to you all, that we do definitely have to get outside of our bubbles and our comfort zones and really get engaged with the people around us. And I think that is a thing in the society that we've all kind of come into, like, just, that's your business. You over there, I'm over here. But we live in a community together. We're here majority of our time, so we should know who we live amongst. But yeah, I just wanted to hit on that personally.
So I just appreciate this conversation because this is providing an opportunity for us to discuss instead of just posting something and expecting people to read it the way that we posted it. I mean, this is having a conversation. So I just want to go, I mean, Emily's point is valid. Like, people have been doing the work and thinking and believing that, you know, the work that they were doing is valid, and it was valid. It was great. And it's just like, all right, now I have to do more. How am I expected to do more? What am I supposed to be doing? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, let's just have a conversation. And sometimes we don't do that. Sometimes we just post stuff on social media and it's like, boom, and you're reading it a certain way. And it's just like, no, like you said, let's just talk over to the garden. Let's just have a conversation over anything. Let's just talk and say, yes, it is a lot of work. I'm not expecting you. You're not expecting me to conquer it all. Just do this little bit. I'll do this little bit. And community together, we'll do more together. But too often we don't do that because we don't have that conversation. Because some of us, I should say some of us, I can sometimes be afraid to have the conversation because then I'm vulnerable. I'm sharing myself. It's just like, do I want to be vulnerable in this space?
That part.
Yeah. That
And
is
that's
hard. That is hard for me.
Part.
Yeah.
You ain't by yourself on that one. You are not by yourself on that one. I just had that conversation with someone too. It's about you being opened, which can be scary when people attack. And, you know, especially, let me look, I'm about to go somewhere, y'all. I'm sorry. But I just had this conversation and I just told someone that, you know, something happened. I don't know if y'all, this Ferguson and Friends group, first of all, I'm gonna pray for that anyway. But they posted some things in there recently, and that was so shaking up for me, because I said, as someone who's out here trying to be in community and do community, and who I don't see myself as a perfect person in some sense, you know, to want to do right by your community, but also have a past, and then people are ready to just attack you for being human. That is scary. And I think, again, it closes people off to not even want to engage. And that's what's wrong with Ferguson right now, I believe, is that we're, like you said, we're not engaging each other enough. We're attacking. And that has to stop. It literally has to stop. Not only because Ferguson, I live here and I want to see Ferguson flourish and thrive, but also because the world is looking in right now. We could be a great example for how St. Louis can move forward. Not just Ferguson, but the region alone, how it could really move forward. But that's my 2 cents. That's my personal.
Well, that's the problem, is that people are too quick to be snarky on social media, of what I call the keyboard warriors. So they can react really quickly and say negative things and never come up with a positive possibility. Like, for example, there was a whole conversation about what color to paint the coffee house. Really? That's all you have to do with your life, is to discuss paint color on a building, and you're not lifting a hand to help those people open that coffee house or anything else. All you could do is sit around and talk about when's it going to be open. I mean, it's those low-level negative things that get blown up on social media that really need to be snipped in the bud, because that's so much energy that's wasted.
You
know? And people, and the other thing is, people come in there and they look at that and they're going, wow, that's all Ferguson can talk about, is stuff like that. I mean, that's embarrassing.
It's so much more that we have to work on, to be doing, and we're wasting arguing about something that simple, like you said. But it really, So,
I have to jump in here and say, I think we missed the foundation. We always want to get right to the work. Nobody wants to go through the process. Engineering processes, scientific process, all these things have a reason and a purpose. If I design a lesson, there's a purpose for us to go through these things. Well, here's what's happening. We don't have a community, but we want to solve these community problems. Well, first of all, if we develop as a community and understand what we want our culture to look like, now we can be creative and innovative. But if you're going to sit back, people who don't have good intentions and don't have any integrity are the ones who are sitting back and throwing darts and throwing rocks through the windows while people are trying to build. But it can, if we create a community, if I know who you are, if I work with Mr. Mueller or Emily, and we know each other in a community sense, now when we get to those difficult parts where we have to do a little back and forth, a little dance around, what is it going to look like? We've already decided on why we're doing it, but everybody's why doesn't match up. And so now it's like everybody has their own ulterior motive, which makes your intentions and integrity a little shaky. I'm not saying that they're bad, but I'm saying they're not aligned. And so think about this. I could go out here into the community and start a program. I can do that. I don't have a problem with doing that. But before I start a program, did I connect with the other people who are trying to do the same thing? Did I align with that? It's not going to happen. We get empowered, and then we kind of forget that structural foundation of community. If you can't build the community, you're not going to be able to build a strong anything. And I mean, that's education system, that's a technology infrastructure, that's not going to develop kids on a career in college pipeline. I mean, all those things are issues in Ferguson, but we're trying to solve them as individuals. And if I don't like that particular individual, then I go back and I spend all my time trying to tear that individual down. And in the process, I tear down anything that's positive that could be possible.
Yes.
That's the good thing about Proud, because we've really been trying hard to have those discussions. Our numbers are growing. We're going up to 45 to 50 people just on Zoom to remind folks that there is a place where you can communicate on the more positive aspects, and also to remind people that there's things that they don't know about their own community, that if they were to participate in discussion, they would actually help. We had with MPSC, when I was overseas when Michael Brown was killed, and I came back to MPSC and people were screaming at each other and arguing and just being ugly. And so I talked to an acquaintance at St. Louis University who basically specializes in communication. And she did, I think it was like a 5-week workshop with the people at MPSC on communicating and also thinking about what they wanted Ferguson to be like. And that was successful. But again, not everybody was there. The same thing that happened when we had the discussion on race and racism. We had about 50 people, but then some of the people who really need to be there, of course, weren't there. The issue, it seems to me, is to continue having these programs and having opportunities and trying to get those people there who are snarky online, but don't show up to actually have real discussions.
Yeah.
And the key to getting to happen, I think, really, Mr. Sharp said it really well. The issue is affirmation. Is that the term you used? But the positive. So I think the reasons we have so much of this bad dialogue is because it is power, and it takes care of the issues of fear. So if I attack somebody because of the paint color on their coffee shop, now I don't have to worry about accepting it, right? So you can just set that whole thing aside. We do this in our politics all the time. It's attack the person, or attack something minor, so then you can dismiss everything. If we instead really work with the idea of how can we listen to each other and find the positive in what each other is saying, that's the only way we're going to be able to solve this. So you talked about communication. A couple years ago, well, right after Michael Brown, I was talking to Mayor, well, he was no longer, but Brian Fletcher. And he was talking about the issues of communication is that, and these are his terms, that the Black people in Ferguson do not participate. And that was his way of just saying, I don't have to do with anything. He was able to just discount everything just with that one statement. So the question then becomes, how much did he try? And how much did he ask what everyone else wanted to do? Because the problem is he had set the agenda without talking to anybody. And if you weren't willing to deal with his agenda the way he did it, then you weren't participating. So we're talking about all these people who are working in churches and other government groups. There's volunteers all over everywhere. And yet he was able to only see this one microcosm. If you are not doing something good for me because I'm mayor, then you don't count. So we need to keep the positive. How do we engage as much as possible? How do we ask what other people are interested in, what your needs are, what your preferences are? How do we engage and then set our agendas together in a positive way? That's what
I'll just say that I didn't have that conversation with Mayor Fletcher, but I know that I did work with him for a number of years, and I know that he did work. He was out in the community. We all, on my own reflection, I know I could have done a better job engaging community members when I was a elected official. So again, I wasn't part of that conversation, but I just want to speak on that. Mayor Fletcher, he did work. He did go out in community. As elected, sometimes we didn't do as much as we could have done. And I'm just going to say, I didn't do as much as I could have done. And I think it goes back to what Orlando said before. Sometimes we don't want to do the work. Sometimes we just want to get to the prize. And sometimes doing the work is the hard part that is sometimes too hard. And so I appreciate now that we're willing to do the hard work and going out and trying to build a sense of community. And I'm just hoping that as we're having all these people looking at us, that we're not trying to rush it, because it's not trying to fix the community for today and making us feel good, but it's making sure that the next generation.
Yes, because as someone who's raising 2 daughters in Ferguson, and who has now purchased a home in Ferguson, I'm stapled into Ferguson because of the longevity. I agree. It's not going to be a quick fix. I definitely think we have a long way to go. But I do think also that we have a lot to unveil the ugly before we can just keep painting it pretty and saying that, you know, it's just pretty. Like, we're going to have to unveil the ugliness. And it's some.
We still haven't gotten to the core of the junk. I mean, that junk is down there, and it's building and it's growing.
It's
and
building,
we're trying to put
but I mean, it's
put a
building,
Band-Aid on it.
But it's right. People are trying to cover it up like it's not even there. And that part is what's it's just going to become an ugly, infected, and then the pus is going to start coming out. It has to be uncovered, aired out. You know, when you get a wound, they be like, you got, don't put nothing on it right now. Let it air out. Let it we need to air some of this junk out. And people have to get their pride aside, not proud, but pride aside. And really, like you said, get out here and engage and get to know people. Even the people who are amongst you in your own, on your own block, on your own streets. It starts with, again, the small of a conversation. That's again why I love the Hood Talks podcast, because we have to have the conversation. Shout out to you for saying that too, Duane. Like, it has to start there. And even if it's in the privacy of your own space, it doesn't have to be like here on live, but in the privacy of your own space, have these conversations with each other, or get back into the spaces of having, well, I don't know, y'all, because some of the meetings I've been to, it's been rowdy. But if we can even get to the meetings and have respectable conversation, having it there. But you know, when I mean meetings, I'm talking about those neighborhood association meetings and things like that, getting involved and being in there. So I do want to, for time's sake, kind of get into talking about, because I know we talked a lot about the division, and we talked about a lot about the past. What are your hopes and, you know, your aspirations, your whatever you feel like? What do you want to see for Ferguson in the future? What do you, the development? We know a lot of things are trying to come to Ferguson. You know, a lot of stores, a lot of, you know, different housing things, and all this development that's going on in Ferguson. But along with that, you know, just community wise, what do you want to see in Ferguson, and how do you want to see, how do you see Ferguson in the future?
I'll say my answer is pretty short. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to agree with everything everybody says, but for me, the thing is the schools. And I hope that in the future that I find a way to become a part of making it happen, because I won't say that I've been a part of making it happen. So, but I want for us to have schools that are preparing our kids, and, you know, when they go out of this city, that it's a level playing field for them and the other kids as they go into college or into their careers and things like that. And I worry about schools, because I know it also that affects who moves in, you know, and wants to raise families. You know, they look at the schools. So that's my number one.
Yeah, I love that. Emily, I would love to see them matriculate through schools, but then live, work, and play right here in their own community. That's kind of my goal for myself right now. I'm really intent on that. But in answering the question, I would love to see Ferguson as a more connected community, where residents are valued and heard, that community agencies and organizations are connecting their resources versus standing in silos and patting their chest about what they're doing and how they're impacting our community. I would love to just see the 18 to 24-year-old age range be uplifted and elevated because I believe they're the key. They are the ones who can actually bridge this gap between generations, as well as things that they can really inform our practice on what has been happening and what could be possible. So definitely around technology. I would love to see the schools provide opportunities and community agencies provide opportunities for kids to develop some transferable skills that allow them to see opportunities that are not just in the regular sense of education. There's a lot of opportunity there, and that we would leverage that as a community as something that could be touted as, you can do this in Ferguson. You don't have to go somewhere else. This can happen right here. We have some incredible agencies. We got a lot of buildings being put up on West Florissant. We have we have two higher education institutions that could impact it. It just, to me, it just seems like we're not connecting the dots. And so I think Ferguson, once it becomes community, can definitely enhance and develop some ways to solve some of the problems in-house versus we bring somebody else in.
I love that. I think that's a great point. That being able, like, just the part of live, play, and work in Ferguson, like having the ability to do it all right in your own space. And I think we don't have enough of that here.
Me and my wife are educators, but don't ask me why I didn't send my kids to Ferguson schools.
I know.
And I've worked and participated in Ferguson schools. I'm not void of working with them, but I also, as a parent, think differently. You know how you apply some things a little bit differently when you're talking about your own. And so I'm really, Mike Brown's situation caused me to rethink, you know, what I was doing. Made me feel like I was like, yeah, you're kind of complacent in your own neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a valid point. I think about that a lot too, with my children, and that's one of the things I'd be like, oh, I like it here, I love it here, but school is important.
But I had that privilege. Everybody does not. And so
everybody does not.
Everybody does not.
They have
my wife and I did robotics program, and literally robotics is one of the most incredible things, but go and check and see if they actually have robotics programs in the schools. And we will say, yes, we have robotics program, but robotics program, yeah, Lego robotics, you get about 10 kids in there. How many of the other kids? We have a whole STEM system in Ferguson that the majority of kids cannot tap into. I'm okay with that. I love that we have a place for kids to matriculate, but did you give everybody a opportunity, launching point?
Yeah. Yeah. Was it an even ground when it was established for everybody to have access to? Yeah.
I'm real. Oh, go ahead, Jackie.
Okay. No, I was just going to agree with Orlando, because I was just doing the tour of the STEM feeder school and the STEM high school. And even though I kept on pressing them on the demographics, and it's, oh yeah, we're 67% African American. But you know, I'm saying that to say is that since I've been here and worked at UMSO, one of the things I always try to do is, if there's a program or if there's a grant or if there's some kind of way that UMSO can connect to Ferguson, then that's what I've been doing. And that's what I'm doing right now, matter of fact, on 2 major grants. But the thing is that we also have to have the community saying, hey, UMSO, hey, Flow Valley, we need you all to step up. I do sort of WashU social studies students doing surveys here, even though I did work with WashU too, and it's my alma mater. But to me, it makes sense that the 2 higher education facilities closest to Ferguson are the ones that should be in here, and those are the ones that are stepping up. And what it's been real spotty. You'll have this group here, or this after school group here. I know it's contingent upon funding and everything, but I really like to see something more consistent, because I know the money is there because I'm looking at it, but also having the facilities and the people here reaching out and saying, we're here, we want to work with you, give us your money to do these projects. Like the robotics project, for example, that's not just in the STEM high school.
Great point.
I'm always eager to hear about school, because that's, I mean, as a retired teacher, and that's been my focus in any of the community work that I've done, has been about school. And I think I think Ferguson as a community really needs to get on board with our school district. You know, like Dr. Jackie, you talked about, you toured the STEAM program and everything, and 67% African-American, but which communities did they come from? You know, I would be willing to venture a guess that the majority of that 67% came from outside of Ferguson, probably from Florissant. And so, and I could be wrong, that's just my guess, but we really need to attach ourselves and get on board with our school district. And it goes both ways. I'm not saying it's just, well, Ferguson isn't paying any attention to the school district. I'm not saying that. I think our school district could do a whole lot more to bring Ferguson into it. So I think that's something, you know, back in the day, I'll talk about back in the day a little bit. When I graduated from McClure High School, almost 50 years ago, you know, it was one of the top districts in the state. So, you know, what's happened? You know, I mean, part of it is just my own pride and pride of place and everything of, you know, wait a minute, we've got a good school. We always had a good school district. Why isn't it viewed that way anymore? Why don't we have that anymore? I know all about test scores. Believe me, I know. And, you know, we can't just look at that. We have to look at the whole piece. We can't ignore that, because that's the standard that's out there right now. So we can't ignore it, but we also have to use what we know is going on in our schools, and we have to embrace our schools. You know, several years ago when I was still teaching, and some of you may have been involved with it too, have been around here for a while, we had a group within the district, High Achievement for All. And it came out, you know, when talking about the gap in education and everything between white children and African-American children, and trying to address that. And everybody was all in about that. And I remember, you know, a great slogan, just that one right there, high achieve, every child is my own, was the kind of the slogan beyond the high achievement for all. And so I said, you know, in Ferguson, if you want to advertise something, you put a banner up on the railroad trestle across Florissant Road. I mean, you know, whenever anything's going on, that's where it goes. Banner goes up there. And people were like, oh, well, I don't know if we can do that, if we should do that. It was like it was new to them. And I'm like, if you drive down Florissant Road, you see that banner on the railroad trestle, you know, on the overpass and everything. So just things like that. I mean, that's a very minor kind of thing, but I think it kind of illustrates, are we really, as a community, totally all in on our school district? Are we, you know, buying into, well, there's something else better out there? Is there really? And is there really for our children, our African-American children? Because we've seen, and the data shows that just because you look at another school district or another school system, since we have a proliferation of private and parochial schools in this area, if you look at that, are they really, are our children from, are our African-American children going to those schools? Are they really doing better? Are they being educated better? The data is showing they're not. They're not doing any better than our kids in our majority African-American districts. So I think we really,
let's touch on that real quick. I want to touch on it. Yeah, real quick, because I want to say, I'm trying to get where you're coming from. And I want to say, when you're saying that, you mean like because sometimes people are taking kids out of their community, their environment in some sense, and putting them in environments that are different. So in sense, let's say you might have a African-American child who, right, of course, Ferguson is predominantly, in a sense, Black, and Black children are in Ferguson schools, right?
Right.
And you take your child out of that environment in some sense and putting them in an environment like maybe what is a school that's, I don't know, a school that's out of
Right.
Ferguson. It's predominantly maybe a different culture. Are you saying that is where they're not succeeding at because of the different of cultural sense in the is that why they're not? Because now this is me being interested and wondering why, I guess,
Right.
and that's why is that being said, that if you take kids out of that school district, they're not to
If you look just at the data, which everybody's wanting to look at the data, on test scores, on all of those kinds of things, if you really dig in, because that has been one thing with the whole No Child Left Behind movement from the government and everything, of disaggregating the data. And to me, that was the most important thing, practically the only good thing that came out of that we didn't lump schools or school districts. We didn't look at just all the kids. They disaggregate. They have to say, okay, how are your children who receive free and reduced lunch? How are they performing on these measures that we're looking at? How are your children? How are your Black children doing? How are your Hispanic children doing? How are your white children doing, and all of that? And when you start looking at that data, it has shown that our children that do go to these districts that we think of, oh, they're the best districts around and we want them to go there, are, when you look at those separate groups, they're not doing so much better necessarily than they're doing in their own home districts. And so that's something that we have to be aware of, when we're saying, okay, oh, I don't want to send my kids to Ferg Floor because, oh, their test scores, and oh, they're, and all that kind of thing. And my child, because they disaggregated in a lot of different ways, by ethnicity, by if they're, like I said, free and reduced lunch, if they're a special needs child, if they get special, if they have an IEP, all of that. Are they really doing better in these other districts? Or if, when you look at the whole big picture, the one number for all the children in the group, that's not standing out. So I think that's something that we need to look at too, and really, okay, what about our own local school district that our tax money is paying for, that we live in, that will have an effect on our property values, that, and all of those kinds of things. And my feeling is we need to support our local districts. And if they're not living up to what they need to be doing, then yeah, we need to get in there and say, wait a minute, my kids are here, or I live here, or whatever, and this needs to change, and work for that change. It's another way, like we talked earlier about, why Ferguson, when we're not going to solve the problems by leaving, we're not going to solve the problems in our schools either by leaving.
I think that's, go ahead, Duane. Go ahead.
No, I agree. I agree with education. I agree with the 18 to 24-year-olds and seeing how we can do that, especially with the institutions that we have in close proximity to Ferguson. And I completely agree with seeing how community can support the school districts. And so understanding that school districts rely heavily on our taxes, and what does our taxes actually look like? And with the developments that are happening or not happening in Ferguson and in North County, that's hurting our school districts. And so until that is actually rectified, fixed, or solved, how can community come in and basically support the school district that, let's just say, is doing their best in basically educating our youth. And I agree, if they're not doing their best, then let's just go in and fix it. But giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're doing their best, how can we support that? So organizations like the Ferguson Youth Initiative, which is helping, organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, or Emerson Family YMCA, or churches that are doing that work, or just community members that are doing that work, and seeing how we can go in to a school district and say, what do you need us to do outside of the schools, in partnership with the schools, to do this work? Going back to what Orlando has said before, is how do we work in collaboration and partnership instead of saying, oh, I have a great idea to come in with a charter school and it's going to solve all the issues, understanding that that is not going to fix the issue. And so how do we educate and do the holistic education of our youth in every different regard, even if it's tutoring, support, like, how did you do today? What's going on? Do you need to shadow me? What is happening in that regard? So I think that we need to do that for our school system. And I think we need to do that for our entire community as well. So if you drive down many of our major thoroughfares right now that are commercial districts, they're suffering to a certain degree with development that's actually happening, with businesses that are happening in there. So the businesses that are there, let's support them. Let's go in and see what we can actually do. And sometimes I'm very critical. If my food does not come out exactly the right way, I am very critical. And
you should be.
I should be, but I also should give that second and third chance instead of just saying, I'm not going to go back there, because I give flexibility to other regards, or saying, all right, you know what, this is kind of bad, but instead of just giving you a ding on Yelp or something like that. I'm just saying, in all that sense, I think community voice, community empowerment, I would like to see that in the future. How is community at the forefront of all these decisions that are being made? Because those are going to withstand the years of people in office, the city managers that are here, this, that. If community is at the center of every decision that is made, then next year when there's another person that runs for office, wins or loses or whatever, that next person, 3 years, 6 years, we still have this community-minded plan that's in place that is going to withstand the ups and the downs, and how it actually looks, what is actually what the future actually holds, or how it actually is formed, might not be exactly how I designed it 10 years ago, but it's still going to be community voice. And that is, I think, one of the benefits of Ferguson, is because you can have an idea and implement that idea, because people will rally behind you if you talk to the right people, if you gather the right connection on Facebook and do that out there, whatever. Community is going to rally behind you, but let's just make sure that it's connected to all of Ferguson. And so I love the work that's going on in downtown Ferguson. I mean, it's great, it's wonderful. There's still 2 other thoroughfares that are part of our community that need that same attention, that same love, or that same connection.
Yes.
And so, yes, if we're going to put it here, let's just make sure that we're marketing. And I agree with you. It was almost, let's just put a sign up on the railroad trestle. And I was like, all right, I got that sign on the railroad trestle, I'm done. And still, until I start traveling on the West Florissant a little bit more, because I'm right there, our new house fair. And it's like, oh, there's no railroad trestle over here. How do I get that message out?
Pride that Mrs. Randazzo spoke about, that she has for her school. That's not easily created. That is part of a culture that you grew up in, and everybody was able to participate in that. Well, let's talk about if everybody has that sense of belonging. And I think that's the part that's damaging the whole. If you carve out just that little space, you might say Ferguson is great, but as a whole, it may not be the same experience for everyone. And so until we're able to create, and not by ourselves. And I think that's part that kind of makes me lean back from anything political or whatnot, because oftentimes you get in spaces and it's like, yeah, he'll do it. He's speaking, just get him to do it. But we have to, as a community, find people who are passionate about it and are engaged, and support them. And I think that's where we miss out, because we haven't developed that community foundation. So if a good idea comes out, we're not worried about where you came from or what school you go to. We're gonna pull together and try to make this happen. I think that's where the problem starts. And as far as education and test scores, I can go to sleep on that one, the hours I've spent around that. But I'm gonna tell you, at the end of the day, our children are not test scores. That test score and that data is all based on financials. At the end of the day, what impacts learning is whether that child feels they have a sense of belonging and that they're cared for. They'll learn from anybody. It doesn't matter. They don't really care. But in our communities, oftentimes teachers are stressed. They're overworked and they can't. I'm telling you,
they're underpaid, and they have their own situations in the system that they are fighting against, and it becomes overwhelming.
We have to support the educators in the classroom, and I'm not talking about with just dollars. That's a given. But if we were there when the teacher says, hey, you know what? Me and my kids are really trying to do this project. You have expertise in said area. Can you come up or give a presentation or make yourself available? That, I mean, especially happening in your own community where that kid may again see you walking through the neighborhood and say, hey, oh, that's the guy that does such and such. It's an incredible opportunity, but we miss that. We miss that, and we look to diminish what teachers do on an everyday basis because politically it makes sense, because I can validate my position on certain things. At the end of the day, I want all kids to learn. I don't care where you come from. If you're in my class, then let's do this. If you're in my building, let's do this. If you're in my community, hey, let's do this. Those same kids are being served by several different agencies, but never connect the dots. How could I possibly be a part of Ferguson Florissant School District, go to Boys and Girls Club, swim at the Y, and I haven't made it? That kid should be so tied into the Ferguson community that if they do something special, everybody in Ferguson should know, oh, this baby made honor roll today, and let's celebrate that. But we don't. We don't. And definitely the kids don't, and they kind of follow our lead. You know,
I just like how Orlando introduced himself by the new kid on the block. And I think if we go back, I mean, he's been spitting knowledge the entire time. I just want people to recognize, right? Just dropping the mic here and there. I just want
dropping the gem. But I mean, no, I think all of you guys are on some valid points, and I want this to be a teaching moment for the viewers and listeners. When we talk about how important education is in community, if we take that away, we start to lose the community, and we see that happening in some of the St. Louis City areas where schools have closed, and then now the community is gone. So school and education is to me the heart of community. And I'm with you too, Orlando, on how we support the youth, how we uplift the youth, and how we need to be more engaged because we have them watching us. And so right now, if the kids are looking at us and what they see and living in Ferguson, you know, we're not putting on a great example at all. So we definitely have some work to do in that aspect. Any other things? Like for me though, I do like to hit back real quick about what I want to see in Ferguson in the future. I do also want to see a lot of positive development going around what Orlando said, and like kind of what you were talking about too, Duane, is like I want to, because I know we need the tax money, so I do want to be able to shop here in my area. I don't want to have to go over to a Florissant Aldi's, or have to go over to a St. Charles Walmart, or you know, go out of my area to give my dollar somewhere else where they're not going to be beneficial for my community. But I also want to see great I want to have access to great things, or that like needed things. I want to see, you know, good food, great healthy food and options. I want to see like things that I can take my children to go and play. I shouldn't have to go all the way to St. Charles or somewhere in Illinois to have a great play date for my kids. So I do want to see those.
Or a library.
Huh?
Or even just a library. How do I get access to the library if I'm those are things that we need, and people don't see the value. I walk to the library. You know,
like, so again, you know, with the development, it's like we have the foundation of these things. Like what our YWCA could be. Like, it's so many things that could be in that YWCA that could be accessible to the community. So how do we get funds so we can get that? Right, our library. It could be so many.
I think the funds are there. I think they're just not being used effectively. We need to hold these people accountable to be better stewards of what they're leveraging dollars for our community, but not investing them in our community. And I know that might be a hot button topic, but
So the
is what
money
it
is
is.
there. It's
Well,
just
my question is, we raised all these good points. So what do we plan to do? Because the point's been raised, and it seems, again, going back to communication, it seems again, um, giving those people in the community that don't have voice but need voice,
Yeah.
more voice. And I mean, that's why I like working with the Southeast Ferguson group, because they're trying to do that, working out of those apartment buildings with the kids, especially the 13 through the 19-year-olds, Latasha, and been doing a lot of that on her own. And so my question is, how can we actually help people who are trying to do these things? Because it's good to sit around and say what needs to be done, but how do you do that?
so I
That's why
think
that's why I'm involved in getting grant money in, because I used to run an after school program in Ferguson, Florissant for 10 years. And it was about community. It's about kids understanding their racial identity and how they felt about community. And so it went from Walnut Park to Cool Valley to Airport. And for 10 years, we worked with the kids on that. And it was great. And I would see them in the grocery stores, and they'd have things to say to me about things that we had discussed earlier in the week. But then the federal money ran out. So they didn't have that program anymore. So my thing is that there's money out there, like I said before. How do we as concerned citizens work together with those institutions and with those people who can write the grants to actually get some of this off the ground?
Well, I think first of all, it's going back to what Orlando said, is connecting with people who are trying to do these things. Because sometimes in my own space, that is not something that I can navigate very well. But me and Orlando have several conversations about things that we will talk about that we would want to do, or what we would want to have in our community. So I guess it's, again, we having to loop each other together, connecting and coming together to talk about what we're trying to do, how we can do it, who can bring what to the table, and moving forward and working together. So I think that is where it is. And so it's just getting more engaged and more involved in our hometown, and being open to continue these conversations off of here, and being more involved with each other.
Linda Hill has a whole TED talk on collective genius, and it is so valuable, because when we start to value everybody in the group and allow them to live in their truth, in their space, it's an incredible opportunity. And so for me, what I'm trying to do is not recreate what's already happening, but also get invested in what's happening. I haven't participated as much, so I'm going around volunteering and trying to connect. Like I've never heard of what was happening over on the southeast, but I don't have a problem. I enjoy digging the ditches. I don't necessarily want to be out front. I don't necessarily need my name to be out there, but I really want to be down there as a support, helping do the work that that makes the thing go, versus standing out front. So definitely, if you can, I would love to connect with whoever is doing whatever in our community, just so I can get a better understanding of what's happening, and then maybe I can encourage and lead people to also participate and support that.
We have a framework that is supposed to take care of many of the things we're talking about. Last year, the city finalized our Ferguson 2040 plan that reached out to much of the community. In the end, there were some major failings in follow through, but it did a really good effort, I think, of trying to engage the community on a holistic plan. The topics range from neighborhoods, from commercial development, to defining character and place, to working with transportation issues, etc. The one great fallback is it did not include our schools, because for some reason, because the school district is a separate political or governmental entity, they didn't feel that they should review how the school district interfaces with the city. But it was a very holistic process looked at the entire community and how it could be tied together, and provides then not only a framework for getting some of that to happen, but there was also the mayor's task force that was developed to provide some of the follow through and to look at funding methods for some of these ideas.
Mhm.
So what I think needs to be done is we need to bring that back to the fore. Especially, we've got a couple other things like West Florissant corridor, Green Streets project that needs to, that needs to be coordinated with it. Our zoning rewrite, we're looking at our park plan again. These kinds of things. So we need to bring all these things together and then extend the conversation so those voices who did not participate the first time now have an opportunity, and maybe we can amend that document. But that's where I think we should go first, our Ferguson 2040, and really push to get some of those things to happen.
That's a great starting point. I've read that and I have access to that and kind of wrap my mind around it. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that really learning through NLF, that a community plan really can help things happen in an organized fashion rather than they're just all over the place.
All right, y'all. For time's sake, thank you guys. Thank you. I appreciate this dialogue and this conversation. I do want to touch on one last question, but I also want to say this. I know you guys are rooted in community and that you guys are doing things out here in Ferguson. But if anyone that is viewing this who may not be in the aspect of community work, who just feels kind of like Emily says, we're just living here. Please know that your voice matters. You deserve to speak up and be able to be in all of this dialogue, in whatever dialogue or whatever tables, whatever seats, or whatever conversation is going on about what's happening in this area of Ferguson. So please get involved. The Hood Talks podcast will try to single in more about what's happening in Ferguson and, get more about community stuff going. Shout out to Orlando.
I got you.
Because what he said, we have to really zoom in and support and help each other. So we definitely want to work and get something deep here and home. And but y'all, anywhere in St. Louis region, I'm gonna end it on that because this is our last live show of the season. Anywhere, y'all, STL community, wherever you are, y'all, get involved. If you've learned nothing else from listening to this conversation, get out here, be a voice of whatever you need in your community. Talk about it, get out here, do whatever you have to shed light on it. Let it be known what you want, because you live there, you deserve to do that. And I just want to really make sure that that's emphasized, and then engage, and also be and also, because I know life happens, I get it. As a mother of two, I always say that, and I talk about that importantly because I understand the heaviness of that, the loads of life, and how you have all these other responsibilities, jobs and careers and all of that other stuff that's going on. But we have to get involved in our neighborhoods and in our communities and really put some type of effort into making sure that we're at the table having the conversation of what's going on in our areas, so that we can uplift and thrive and survive, thrive in our communities. So I do wanted to highlight that. But to you all who are guests on the show, thank you again for coming and having this conversation with me. One thing that you want to give advice to maybe other residents, maybe this leadership that we have here right now in Ferguson, maybe, the new leadership, we all just, we just have a new city manager, but any advice that you want to provide to whoever in the Ferguson area, please do that. And then also leave us, if you would like, with some contact information, so people may want to, contact you and engage or, collaborate or something with you. Please do that for me. And I'll call out. Duane, go ahead and start us off.
Why'd you start with me? So I think the biggest lesson that I've had since being in Ferguson, and then the thing that I continue to try to do or want to leave people with, is just go to a place to be present. And so you can experience that culture, experience that organization, experience that way of being, and then just learn. It's easy to just go there and sit, to understand the passion, the mission, the will, the want, the needs. And then you can see how you can support instead of going in saying, this is what you need to do. And so I just encourage everyone to try a different culture and be flexible in that regard. So that might mean going to the Proud events, or attending the talks on racism, or going and sitting along one of the businesses along West Florissant or Newhouse Ferry, just to see what that actually means and how it's different than what you heard it to be or what you might have thought it was previously. So that's just my encouragement. And then if there's any places that you think that I could be of support or be of help or need to experience, just let me know. I can be found on a lot of the social media accounts, too many social media accounts with a whole lot of selfies. And so I apologize on that. But by email, it's James, JAMDESDT, JamesDT at Missouri.edu. And you can reach out to me that way as well.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Duane James. Mr. Allen, come on now, answer the question for the folks, and then please let us know if we could reach out to you and the Proud organization, how we can do that.
Okay, well, exactly. The best thing is if you want to continue the discussion from anything we've talked about here or other things, Proud is always looking for the best topics that we can help host for the discussions to work on these kinds of issues and help move our community along. So please, if you've got some ideas of things that you would like us to take on, let us know. I think the next thing we're going to try to do is take a second look at the organization of our city. As we have a new city manager coming in, we had a courageous conversation last spring that talked about the relationship between the city manager and the city council and how the city works and who has what function. And we will probably be doing that again to help make sure that everybody understands that dynamic. So, but there are other topics, we would love to hear them, and we can be contacted at proud.ferguson@gmail.com.
All right, thank you. Miss Emily, any advice, suggestions, or anything for any other residents of Ferguson or leadership?
I guess, get out there and talk to people and meet people, like this conversation is great. So, when get involved in an event, because if you want things to happen, you want to be that type of place, make sure you shop here when you can, make sure you wait till you get here to get your gas, things like that. And thinking about that face to face, I'm just thinking about how much it meant when Ms. Noah came around and was meeting all of us. And if the police officers would, when they drive down the street, would pull over and say hi to the kids, I think that would make an amazing difference. Just one-on-one conversations.
I think that's a valid point. I remember in my childhood, my grandmother stayed in Beverly Hills, and I worked at the local McDonald's, but I remember the police, I remember talking and having conversations with the local police. I was 16, and I remember that because they used to come and sit in there, have conversations with us. They used to talk, or they'll see us in the neighborhood. So I think that's a valid point of just, again, goes back to what you said, Duane, being present. Yes. Anyway, if you want to share how people can contact you, it's all optional.
Well, I'm a public school teacher, so I guess I don't usually share my school account for things like that. So
yeah, understandable.
Yeah. So if anybody really wants to talk to me, maybe Siobhan will tell them how to find me.
Yeah, just holler at me. I know what she says. All right, y'all. Miss Carol, come on, tell the people any advice you got, any suggestions for the residents of Ferguson or the leadership that is in Ferguson right now?
Well, I think we're all kind of saying it, get involved, you know, whether that's right in your own neighborhood or somewhere in the city or whatever, get involved. I know I mentioned a couple of the organizations I'm involved with. Our Readings on Race book club at the library is open to anyone. So you can contact the Ferguson Library about that. We meet once a month right now by Zoom. Hopefully we'll be back in person when the COVID numbers allow us. But that is a great way, and to really, you know, we read a book a month, have a great discussion about it. And I know it's really opened up my mind in this last 5.5 years. And as far as school issues and so on, 2 groups locally are Grade A for Change, and we're on Facebook. We don't have a website, I don't think, right now, and we are all, you know, just concerned citizens. And so that would be a good way to look for. So look for Grade A for Change on Facebook. And then Metropolitan Congregations United, we're local, we're region-wide, we're nationwide, all 3. And that's mcustlouis.org, or just, you can search that too, because the tech people change up some of the addresses on me sometimes, and I don't know about it. But at any rate, and I'm around a lot of places, and Shavannah knows how to get a hold of me too, personally, and just get involved. And I just want to give a shout out to one of the best things I think happens in the city of Ferguson, and that is the Twilight Run Walk. Thank you, Mr. James, for that. I know it's a huge amount of work, but whenever I'm participating in that, I'm like, this is the best part of Ferguson right here. So at any rate, go do that walk.
Yes, it is. I'm coming for you next year. I'm walking next year. I'm walking next year. I didn't walk this year, but this was, and again, y'all get involved, because I'm gonna put myself out here because I did not do any of the Twilight runs. I've been to Ferguson for 9 years. This recent year was my first time even being there. And when I say it was a ball, it was so much fun seeing all the people, even the little ones, like the kids. So I can't wait to have my little girls up there next year and really doing that. So shout out to you, Mr. Duane James, for that.
It's the best.
It is.
It's the best.
It's so many things.
It's a whole lot of people that work on it. So it's not just me, it's a whole lot of individuals. And I can start naming all their names, and they're fabulous.
Shout out to the Twilight Run squad. There we go.
There you go. There we go. Thank you.
Almost
thank y'all.
That in their left standard. I didn't say it though. In my head though, I did.
Who else? Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. Miss Jackie, come on and tell the people any advice, any suggestions for residents or leadership, and if you want, how someone can contact you. You're muted. I'm sorry.
Okay, not so much leadership is that, again, get out and participate whenever the Neighborhood Policing Steering Committee has meetings once a month. We'd love to have people come out for that. Please participate in any of the Proud presentations. And also currently we have a grant through UMSO, through the Spencer Foundation. And we want to be able to talk to parents and guardians about how they feel about the school system, how they're being treated during the time of COVID, and how they're interacting with staff and educators. We won't actually start having those interviews until the spring because of COVID, but we're going to have sessions, and they actually will receive a stipend if they come to the sessions, and food if we can meet like that. But please stay aware and involved as much as possible. And I'm almost all social media except for Snapchat. So you can contact me through the Facebook, but we really love to have the parents and also high schoolers. We've been looking into that. It's to get their opinions. What's going on with the school system? What's going to help them to communicate better and get the most out of the school system? And so that will run starting in the spring, right on for a couple of years, really. But that's what we want to start out. with the interviews. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Come on, Mr. Orlando.
I didn't already. I thought, well,
You went.
okay, I'm Orlando. Everything that has been shared thus far is really spot on, and I'm just going to piggyback off that, really, because this is what I am currently doing. I am avoiding getting roped into things because that is a thing. When you're, hanging out like me, people get you to do other things, and so I'm really focusing in on Ferguson. And right now, my motto every day is get familiar and get active. And so that really just ties into what everybody else said. But I would stress this: don't feel like you have to take on any roles. Don't feel like you have to fill any positions that are out there. And if you don't like going to meetings, don't go. Get active in your community. If you can maybe find the people in your neighborhood and maybe say, hey, can you tap into this particular event, and I'll tap in, and then we can come back and share. Create your own connection that enhances the greater community versus, leaning on just your own opinions. I have my own opinions, but my opinions have greatly been improved by just this small group of people. And so when you find people that are doing that, get active with them. They're doing things, line up, get information. You don't have to be the leader. And that's what I'm finding is the biggest value for me is sometimes people need to need somebody to get behind them and dig ditches. Now, if you want me to put the body somewhere, you have to pay me, but I'll dig the ditches. No, that's it. Just joking.
I mean, but did he say the Beyonce comment? I mean, did he just have a Beyonce reference to get information?
Yes, he did. This is the Hood Talks podcast. That's how we roll.
Have you seen what women have been doing? Women have been creating and making it happen, but we got to get behind them. We got Ella, we got Phaedra, we got all these women. We got to get behind them. And I just made the connection, Miss Randazzo. I'm sorry. Love your daughter. I hang out at the library and didn't even make that connection. So we did Lego robotics down there, and when I was with the Y, and so it was great, and really enjoyed. And that's kind of the only reason I will go outside and walk the neighborhood. To like yesterday, I stopped by. Not yesterday, 2 days ago, I actually stopped by the library and picked up a book. So that's another thing. Get to the library.
Great. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's my baby.
Yeah. Oh, there's some stuff happening over there. And they are, to me, the library was the epitome of community during the uprising. I could go there and sit down with kids and just read books. No other purpose. No, you gotta improve your math score. We didn't talk about score. We got down and we did what was important for that kid. That kid knew somebody in the community cared to come out and show up. So,
and I think that right there, showing up, that's what we need to do in community. We need to show up. So again, thank you all for this great conversation. I appreciate you all for coming. Thank you for all the people who have tuned in. Thank you for all the people who have tuned in over this first season. Thank you for all the support. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for listening to and watching the Hood Talks podcast. This has been, for me, an amazing journey. I am so grateful to be the host. It's unbelievable that y'all want me to be the host. But no, I appreciate it. I do. And I hope that coming back the next season, that you guys see all of the hard work that I've put in to bring you more content, more of these conversations, because we will keep having them, because I truly believe this is where change starts. It starts in a conversation. So again, thank y'all. Y'all should give yourselves some claps for an amazing first season of the Hood Talks podcast. And this is it. We will see y'all in December.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yay! Thank you for tuning in to the Hood Talks podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page and also follow us on all our social media.